Proverbs 4:14 and 15. Do not set foot on the path of the wicked, or walk in the way of evil men. Avoid it. Do not travel on it. Turn from it and go on your way. We'll be reading from verses 14 and 15. Proverbs 4:14 and 15. Do not set foot on the path of the wicked, or walk in the way of evil men. Avoid it. Do not travel on it. Turn from it and go on your way. Last week we discussed, I shared with you, as we closed, we were discussing the Lord's Prayer. And the final part of that prayer is, lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. This week, as I was studying and praying and looking to see what was to come next, God directed me to these scriptures. As I read through the Proverbs, the first several Proverbs, Solomon had written these, and he was making it quite clear as he talks about wisdom and adultery and adulterous ways. He kept saying, hold close to your heart. Keep the word of God near you at all times. And he issues some warnings here for us, and about how the devil works and this, that, and the other, and how he kind of springs up into our lives. And that's what I want to discuss a little bit today. There's a couple different areas in which I believe the devil likes to mess with us. And some of it by our own choosings, if you will. Some of it not so much. You see, I think there's those times in our lives where things are going smooth and we're just quite content, and we're not looking for trouble. We're not even considering anything wrong. We're just kind of going along. Things are running smoothly, and we're happy. We're content. But on the other hand, there's times in our lives where maybe things are going okay, and so we get a little big-headed or a little brave, if you will, and we tend to start maybe tempting ourselves with things that should not be, and I will get into that in a little bit. And so today what I want to do is I want to share with you two different stories in the Bible. One will be coming from Proverbs, the 7th chapter. The other one from Genesis chapter 3. And I'm going to kind of show you the lives of two different individuals. One who's taunting sin, and the other one how it just kind of all of a sudden was there. But along with that, I also want us to think about the fact that I believe the devil works on us in two different ways. One, he likes to appeal to our senses. Our taste, our smell, our sight, our sounds, and touch. On the other hand, he likes to mess with our heads. He likes to try to crawl inside and see what we're thinking and mess with us mentally. So we're going to kind of contrast those two with the stories today. And we'll start over here at Proverbs in chapter 7. It starts out, Solomon says, there in the streets below. Starting about verse 5 there. He says, there was a young man, a group of men. He says, I noticed one of them was a little naive, maybe, for lack of better words, depending on which version of the Bible you're reading. And he says, I noticed that he was walking down the streets. And he was headed towards her house. Towards the corner where she lives. And it was dusk. The her in the story we will find will be a prostitute. Now we can take this as a literal form of an actual prostitute. but there's also meaning behind it, as well as the prostitute represented evil. But the first thing we need to realize is that this man, he was tempting fate, if you will. He was heading down the wrong direction. He was heading towards that sin in his life. What we'll find in our lives is sometimes maybe we haven't received Christ till later in life. And so maybe we've lived that life as a worldly person, and suddenly maybe some of those old things of the past start to flare up. And maybe at times we don't even realize where we're headed, but we're testing fate. Maybe you're heading over to an old friend's house. Good intentions, just going to visit. But this old friend maybe isn't a Christian. Now I understand we're supposed to be in the world, but we're not supposed to be of the world. We are to share the gospel, and we're not to completely separate ourselves from them. But at times what we're doing is we're starting to just tiptoe maybe around the outskirts of something that could be destructive. So that's the one person. But on the other hand, we jump over into Genesis. The last part of chapter 2 and going into 3, this is a story we know. It's Adam and Eve. In the latter part of chapter 2, it tells us that God had given the rules to Adam, and he says, you can eat of every tree in the garden except for the one in the middle. The one of knowledge. Do not eat of this or you will die. Then he goes on to share the scriptures through how Eve came to be. How God created her. And in the verse 25, he says, they were both naked in the garden, and they felt no shame. At this moment was the purest hearts on the earth. They were absolutely sinless. God had created them. They felt peace in their lives. They had everything provided for them. This represents us at times. Though we still have sin in our lives, this is what I'm talking about. They were just there. Nothing that they were looking for bad, nothing that was really going on. They were content in where they were doing, and they were doing well. In our lives, we have those moments where we're just going through and everything seems peaceful and we're content and we're doing the right things. These are the moments in our lives when the devil likes to come at us. James chapter 1 verses 13 through 15 reads, when tempted, no one should say, God is tempting me. For God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he tempt anyone. But each person is tempted when they are dragged away by their own evil desires and enticed. Then after desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin. And sin, when it is full grown, gives birth to death. Ooh. In short, what James is saying is we can't blame someone else for our sinful nature. It lies within us. It's something that happens, whether voluntarily or involuntarily, but there's something within us. There is the evil. We'll get into that in a little bit, that dwells within us. Which takes us back to the young man. He was testing that very nature. As he walks down those streets at dusk, we know that if you've ever been in your youth out Halloweening and teeping and stuff, you know that during the day you don't do it most generally, but the starting of evening and darkness is when the honoriness comes out. We know that crime rates increase at this time. So we know from the story that he was tempting fate, probably looking for something. Maybe he didn't know exactly what it was, but he was wanting to test his skills. And it tells us that the woman that was in the house, came running out to him. And she come up and she kissed him. Caught him off guard. And she started to mess with him and his senses just a little bit. It goes on to tell us how she would invite him in. Let's jump over here to Eve. Let's see if there's any little bit of similarities. In the beginning of chapter 3, it says, "Now the serpent, who was more crafty than all the others, came forward, and he came to Eve, and he says, 'Did God tell you you couldn't eat of every tree in the bowl, or in the garden? You can't eat of every one? Or you can't eat of every one?'" He started to mess with her emotionally in her mind. He goes, what did he really say? Is what he was asking. In both situations, the devil just kind of pops up. Evil just sprang forth. The devil in the garden was the serpent. And he started to mess with Eve and get inside her head. What did God really say was what he was asking. Over here, the young woman comes out and she just all of a sudden is there and he's caught off guard. In both situations, this is what I'm talking about. We need to be very careful that as we're going through our lives, the devil is wandering around like a roaring lion. He's waiting to devour us. 1 Peter 5:8. The devil's an opportunist. And when he sees us in a state that he thinks he can get a foothold, he will. And he will do everything in his power to get us to fall. With the young man, she's going to appeal to his senses even more, because after she had kissed him, she looks at him and she says, "Oh, don't worry. I've had my vows. I've said my vows for the day. I've cooked a meal in honor and I've cleansed myself. Come on into my home. Share in the meal." She says, "I've perfumed the house with cinnamon and myrrh, clean sheets on the bed. I have food for your belly. Come," she says, "into my house." You see how she was appealing to his senses? There are times in our lives that a certain sound or smell, something we see, something an old buddy brings up, something along those lines, when we're hanging out with a crowd that might be a little rougher, or maybe we shouldn't be around, something will trigger an old feeling. And it starts to mess with us. We start thinking back about what we used to be. And we start thinking, you know, maybe a little bit of this, I'm pretty strong. Maybe just entertaining the thoughts. Maybe we're not doing it consciously, but subconsciously many times we are. Like, well, you know, I kind of remember. Maybe you're hanging out with your buddy, and in the house you're okay, but he calls you out to the garage where you used to hang out, do things that you're not so proud of. But over here, the devil asks, so you can't, so can you eat of every tree, or what trees are you supposed to eat of? Eve says, well, we can eat of every tree but the one in the middle. And we can't even touch it, she says. We're not even allowed to touch it, or we will die. We see the problem was, she was already wrong on exactly what God had said. He didn't say you couldn't touch it. He said you could not eat of it. She was already starting to change the rules and what had been stated by God. And the devil says, oh, here's my end. You see, if we're not strong in the Scriptures and know what they say, and the devil can find this out, he'll play it against us. You see, he didn't have to appeal to her senses. He was appealing to what she believed it was right and what was right and the differences that lied within. And so he deployed his crafty ways, and the serpent says, really? Well, you surely won't die, because she's already doubting what was really said. He says, you won't really die. In fact, he says, the reason God doesn't want you to eat of this is because you'll become like the gods, with a little g. And you'll have wisdom and knowledge, and you'll know good and evil when all this takes place, and it's good for you. These are the things that God just doesn't want you to know about. In our walk with God, we're going to run across people that maybe they're the old friends, and they're going to start to question what God really says. Maybe some have even been in church, and they've got their own doubts. And maybe the devil is messing with them, and so they're messing with you. And they'll say things to you that will cause you to question God's very being and His truth. Some of the things that people will say will be, well, if God is all this love, then He won't condemn any of us, and so we can all do whatever we want. They take out of context what God is really about. And it starts working on us in our minds. And if said long enough, we can be persuaded to do wrong. You see, the devil is kind of like a salesman. He tries to figure out. That's why they ask all kinds of questions whenever you're purchasing something or whatever it may be. They're trying to find a spot in your life that there's something with whatever you're thinking about buying. If you have something similar, they work at it and they try to figure out a weakness, something you're not happy with. The devil is the ultimate salesman. He picks and prods until he finds an area where you're weak at. Whether it's a mental thing, as it was with Eve, or if it's over here with the young man that's just out carousing, and he can appeal to your senses and get a foothold there. And he keeps trying and trying and trying. Eventually, the Scriptures tells us in the Proverbs that the young man, because of her quick talk and her wittiness, and she threw this in there, and this should have been the big warning sign, but she says, don't worry, my husband's away. He won't be back until appointed time. He took his money. He's gone. He's not coming back to his appointed time. It's safe. You don't have to worry. She had just told him previously that this individual, he was the one she was looking for. She'd done her vows, and now she was looking for that someone great, and invited him in to spend the night and sharing their loves. And then she turned around, oh, my husband's gone anyways. He's gone. And you would think maybe this young fellow would start to see the discrepancies here, to say the least. But the previous scripture said that she was very crafty. She had the ability to manipulate him. Sin works the same way in our lives. The devil works that way. He has a way, if we are not careful, of, I don't know that tricking is the correct or to maybe persuading us to do what we know is not right. And somehow he has an ability to make things look better than they really are. But one of the things that I believe the devil likes to use is the old, "my husband is not here." Basically what she was saying was, it's okay, no one will know. So many times the sins in our lives are committed when we think nobody's watching. When nobody's watching. When we think it's safe. The truth of the matter is God always knows, and sooner or later it will come out. Your actions, the way you're behaving, can be affected by it. Friends and family, we don't know. The list goes on. Unfortunately for the young man in the story, it says, suddenly he found himself being led away like an ox to the slaughter. She got him. And into the home he went. Eve over here, we know the story. The devil messing with her, the serpent, as it was called in the scriptures, was still messing with her. And he just finished telling her how great this fruit of this tree is and all the benefits it has. Again, doing his best as a sales pitch, telling you how great his product really is. And we know that Eve took of the fruit. She took a bite, and then she went to Adam, and she gave to him. You see, she said, well, if it's good for all these things, then why shouldn't I? And she took a step forward, and she grabbed that fruit, and they took a bite. The scriptures tells us at that moment, they realized that they were both naked. Sin entered into man at that very moment. The first battle between good and evil took place in the garden, and evil was up one to know. It can happen in a blink of an eye. And though we don't think that it has consequences to anybody else but us, all we need to do is look back at Adam and Eve. Man, until God returns and the devil is cast into hell himself, will always face those consequences. We suffer because of the evil back then. I entitled today's message, Watch Your Step. The scriptures tells us, avoid it and do not travel. Turn from it and go on your way on this path of destruction. One little step is all it takes. The man took one step. As long as he stayed outside her door, he had a chance. He had a chance to turn and walk away. But he took that step. Eve, over here, took one step towards the tree. Took one step towards the fruit. And look where it got her. In our lives, we have the choice. Solomon made it clear, avoid the path at all costs, run away. We can take a path onto the step, or we can take a step onto the path, or we can take a step and run away. The choice is obviously ours. God does not force us, does not tempt us. He allows it. So the question is, are you watching your step? Or are you just carefully bounding around? Solomon said, keep my words, meaning God's, near to your heart, so that you don't go the wrong way. Solomon's words to us, watch your step. Amen. Reminder of how sneaky the devil is. How he is waiting just to devour us. Though he comes concealed in many ways, Lord, you've told us to keep your word near and to remember your words and to be on alert. Lord, may we go out this week with our eyes wide open. May we see the temptations and the ways of the devil, and may we turn and walk the other way. Lord, we thank you for this message. We thank you for the blessings abound. We thank you, Lord, that you love us enough to warn us, to give us hope and comfort. And Lord, when we do fail, we thank you for your forgiving love. Be with us now as we go forth. Guide and direct our path. May you keep us safe throughout the week. And we ask all these things in your holy name.